Hit us up on Doc Reo TV. You know what time it is, folks. It's time for more Doc Reo TV. That's right. I'm here today with something on my ear, and I had to talk about the elephant in the room, because if I didn't talk about the elephant in the room, people are going to ask me about it. So, just to start off the bat, yes, I have a cyst in my ear. I had it for a while. I had kind of cauliflowered ear from years ago, and there was a cyst in my ear, and the cyst has been sitting in there, and I keep feeling the bump, and I've spoken with my doctors at the VA. Not my primary care has been gone, so God bless her soul. She's been handling her own medical issues. So, but other doctors I've spoken with over the years, and they've just told me to put a hot compress on it when the ear gets inflamed. Well, this time it ended up with 3 different inflamed areas, and one's in my in my face, and it scared me because it just started bleeding. It kept bleeding out of both. So it didn't feel like it was just one, it was more than one. Well, I know this is a little graphic. Been back and forth to different doctors, and they're all telling me to see a specialist, so maybe I have to go see Dr. Pimple Popper. That's just the way. If you want to check her out, go ahead and check her out on YouTube, Dr. Pimple Popper. If you like looking at gross stuff, she got a lot of it on there, so you've probably seen it if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, today's lesson is all about, it's not really a lesson. It's kind of a short brief, some information, some tips / tutorials. And it's mostly because I've been hearing a lot of talk about Adobe Rush. And I've been hearing a lot of talk that I feel is uninformed. And not to cut anyone down, I've heard some bad reviews, and I've heard different stuff. And I think the people who are delivering the bad reviews are just misinformed about the product, okay? First of all, Adobe Rush is not meant to be a standalone editor. Let me say that one more time. Adobe Rush is not meant to be a standalone editor. Now, it can be used as a standalone editor. Now, I might be saying that wrong. Adobe might say, yeah, it is. But no, it's not meant to be a standalone editor for 2 reasons. Because real editing, it takes a different path, okay? First off, real editing requires 2 sides of it. Offline editing and online editing, okay? Well, actually, it requires 3 if you count conform, which is the middle part. But let me just get you to these steps here, okay? Offline editing is what most of us are all doing on our computers, on our laptops, on our iPads, iPhone. We're all doing offline editing. Why? Because it's non-destructive editing. Now, let me rewind here. Online editing these days is pretty much almost non-destructive as well. But real online editing is really trying to pay attention to the old kind of steps that we used to use to do nonlinear editing. Now, when you talk about linear editing, some of those steps are kind of thoughtfully involved in the process too. The process is still kind of the same, all right? But it is not really the same because we're using digital information. So we don't have to use the film. We don't have to cut the film. You can take that information, get it off the film, put it back on film, whatever you need to do. But when you take it off the film, you take it to a digital intermediate. And that digital intermediate is the one thing that you'll be using. The one thing, it sounds like the camera got shut off. The one thing, that digital intermediate is one thing that you would be using to take a sample of that, a lower compressed copy of it. When you're going to be using that digital intermediate, that main digital intermediate, to do the online editing. Now, let me say that again. Online editing, offline editing. And I'm going to explain the difference in just a sec. But you're going to use that digital intermediate to do the online editing, but you're going to take a lower compressed copy of that digital intermediate, which we call a proxy, or it's called a proxy. I didn't really call it a proxy. I always call it a lower compressed, but now I understand that it's regularly called a proxy, just like proxy servers. So we can get into that on another lesson. But the proxy is then taken into, this is how the edit is non-destructible, is because that proxy can be taken anywhere, cut up and everything, and it's not touching the original digital intermediate that you copied from film, or the original digital, raw footage that you copied or took from your camera. Now, if you wanted to, the reason why there's two different sides, online and offline, is because most people don't have the computing power to edit online. The computing power to edit online is pretty high. Like, let's say, for instance, you got a video that's, you've been shooting in 4K RAW, all right, 4K RAW, or even 5K, because Red has 5K RAW. You're shooting something like 5K RAW. None of us really have the type of the type of fast processor. Most of us don't have that at home. Most people have maybe, you know, a regular computer with a regular processor, or maybe even if you got even a higher computer with a higher processor, you still most of the time don't have a high enough computer or a fast enough computer with a fast process, a lot of RAM, and a high-end video card. Some people still use the video card that comes with their computer. So there's no way you're going to be able to do online editing on your computer. It's just that's not the way it works. It's going to take a lower, I wanted to say lower, it's lower res, but it's a more compressed version of your original piece, put it in your computer, let you edit it, and let you export that piece. It lets you do that. Well, in professional editing, we use an EDL, which is an edit decision list. And that edit decision list is usually passed over with a couple of other items to sync up, you know, the audio and the footage and the color and the, you know, the color correction and the color grading. All that stuff is all synced up together, you know, just to get that in your head there. Now, if that is all synced up together and sent over to a post-production house, somewhere, a large facility that's got quadribytes. I mean, I don't even know which one, like zettabytes of information. You know, I wanted to say really higher than that, but you know, if it's got so many bytes of information that they can run through a computer, and they got high processing power, and they got high storage capable hard drives that are probably hot swappable. They have all this stuff. You have to send it over to somebody who's been paying thousands of dollars to keep that kind of facility like this, so they can quickly take your EDL, take your CDL, which is your color decision list, take everything, your grading and all your audio and everything, and slap it together on that particular slap it together, complete the edit, you know. And so I didn't know what I was gonna say yet, because I was thinking about film again, because when I say that, slap it together, we telecine back onto film back in the day. I mean, you can still do it, they still do it today, but you know, it's they use a telecine to scan it back onto film, you know. So these are things that, wow, these are things that I used to do, and now it's all digital. It's all digital. So with that being said, you know, if you're using a camera on camera to iPad, you're definitely using a proxy as well. I don't care if your camera's 4K and your camera's 5K and you're going to your iPad and you're editing and you're using Adobe Rush. Adobe Rush is just so you can prep your edit. It is a pre-edit, so you can take it over to Adobe Premiere Pro, and then inside Adobe Premiere Pro, if you notice the new Adobe Premiere Pro, when you open it, says open a Adobe Rush project, or open a Rush project, I think is how it says it. Now, if it says open a Rush project right there, obviously it wants you to connect with Adobe Rush. So some people are buying Adobe Rush and they think to themselves, oh, you know, I got this and it sucks. This product sucks. This product does not suck. This product is, for me, I realize it is much better than iMovie in how it works and how it works with or integrates with Adobe products. It also gives you a lot more flexibility. Plus, you can also use it on your computer. So you can go take the Adobe Rush project, come over to your computer, which is going to give you a little bit more when you open that same project, a little bit more processing power, over to your regular computer. And once you do that, you can now open it up in Premiere Pro and give it more. And then, once you're done with that, you want to export that stuff, export your EDL, view it if you want to view it on YouTube. But if you want to take your piece and put it on a theatrical wall, if you really want to put it up the size that can be seen by people, you'll need to do online editing. You'll have to take it to some post-production place and get it done for online editing. If you want to do it for, I mean, you might be able to get away with it at 4K if you can get, you know, sit for days processing on one of your Macs or something that you have, but you might be able to get away with 4K because Netflix, you can put it on Netflix, but you definitely won't be able to get it in an exhibition house, on a theater, or in the box office. So that's just one of those things that has to be done. And you probably, I mean, I don't want to say that it won't. You might even be able to get it on network television, but generally speaking, for network television, you're probably going to need several different types of formats depending on the channel you're going to. So this is just, you know, something, food for thought, folks. Now, why? Because digital cameras, well, digital cameras are a little bit different, all right? The image compression is on a digital camera. If you shoot in RAW, it's going to be in RAW. It's going to be lossless. That's what I was trying to say. So if you shoot on your digital camera and you shoot in RAW, it's going to be lossless. Now, lossless means that you're getting every single ounce of that information. You're getting all of that information into the final file that you are recording into or creating. So now that you got the information into the file that you're creating, like I said before, you're going to take it over and have the image compressed so that you can bring it down to a smaller file size, import it into your computer, and go ahead and edit. Now, it's going to be the same file size, but when you open it in that digital intermediate, in that online editing and offline editing bay or any other, it's going to be offline editing, but once you open it in that Adobe Rush or Premiere Pro, it is offline. And now once it's offline, it's going to import it in as a lower compressed version so that it can do its work. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do your work on it. Then, once you've done that, you'll notice that if you look at the original version and you look at your compressed version, it's going to have some differences. And the reason why is because digital cameras and film cameras do a couple of different things. They don't store the same information the same way. Or let's just say digital cameras don't store information the same way as film. Film collects and gathers all the information in the shot because it's only taking what light is reflected on. It's taking the reflection of light and it's capturing it. It's not as seeing you. We aren't seen. Light reflects off of us, and what we see from our eyes is the light, the reflection of that light into our eyes, just like a camera. So once you understand that, you'll get a little bit of more of understanding of why these cameras work the way they do. Once again, we do not see, like if I'm looking at my arm right here, I'm not looking at my arm. I'm looking at the reflection of the light off my arm. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah, it's my arm right here, but what I'm seeing in my eyes is the reflection of the light bouncing off my arm. Because without light, you won't see a thing. So, understand that first concept. Now that you understand that concept, you got to understand that film captures all that information, every single detail. I don't care if there's bumps on the wall. I don't care if there's bumps on a person's face. Film captures that all. Now, higher 4K, 5K cameras are starting to capture more and more and more, but let's take a look at this for a second, all right? Digital cameras do something a little bit different. Digital cameras pay attention to the subject that is moving or whatever is moving in the scene. They will go ahead and record that on every single frame. Over every single frame, you're going to capture every part of whatever's moving, and you're going to capture every frame of that. So if you're shooting 24 frames per second, you're going to get 24 frames of that movement. All right. If you're shooting 30 frames or 29.97, 23.98 or 29.97, you're going to get whatever those frames are of that movement. Now, this background right here is going to be a little bit different. This background is not moving, as you see. I don't think it's moving. No, it's not moving. This background's not moving. So in a digital image, what happens is any part of that background that's not moving at all, that doesn't get blocked off by my arms or anything, like maybe over here, is going to be imprinted like a JPEG, similar to a JPEG. I don't want to say like a JPEG because somebody will be like, oh, that's not what happens. But I'm trying to give you a visual image for those who don't understand, so those who do understand, you know what I'm talking about. Now, it's similar to a JPEG being put on every frame of that background. A JPEG of the same image over and over again. So it's not capturing new information off that image. It's only capturing the original information that it took from maybe the first frame or the second frame or whatever frame it last had a stop in it where my arm is not in the way of it. All right, so when you have something like that, what happens is those images are going to lose, not only going to lose, you know, the quality of the image over here, but you're also going to lose some texture. All those bumps I was talking about, the wall bumps, all that, you're going to lose some of them bumps. If you really look at a wall on a digital image and you look at a wall on a 35mm camera, just take a 35mm photo camera and shoot the same wall, and take your iPhone and shoot the same wall. Now, put those two photos together. When you compare those two photos and when you start to look at the digital side, it's going to be more smooth. So you're going to see the difference on the film side. The film side is going to have grain and texture, just like on my hand right now. My hand's got something going on with it. I don't know. It's been ultra dry, reacting to something. And if you look at this digitally, you won't see as much of the grain. You might see the white ash areas or whatever, but you won't see as much of the grain. But if you looked at this on film, you would see every single texture in my hand, and you would see all of it in great detail. So HD has really gotten to showing the texture, but it still has some areas that it smooths out if it's not moving, depending on where it's at. And that could even be a face. If I'm standing in the same place for a certain amount of time and this area of my chest isn't moving, it's going to copy that area and keep repeating that area on the screen. So it's whatever is not moving that allows it to not track it. You'll understand why it loses that natural feel, because it's similar to music. Now, how many of you all listen to music? Raise your hand. I know you all listen to music. I don't think there's anybody on this planet who doesn't listen to music. So when I talk about music and the difference between digital and analog music, I may be able to help you understand what I'm saying with video. All right, let's dig into that a little bit. Music, all right. This stuff is similar to music, and it's another reason why I was debating on whether I should say this, but I think some of y'all need to stop making music in your home studios and get out there and perform for an audience. Get out there and perform for the masses. Be in front of people. Play your music in front of people, and you'll get a better feel for how people are feeling your music. Because if you're just doing it at home, doing it on your screen, and trust me, I performed in front of people. So when I say that, I've done this from experience. Most of y'all just see me performing on a screen. But I spent years of my life growing up performing in front of people. So I got that experience. I know what it's like. You know, I perform right here just because I like doing music on my own. But even then, I try to use real instruments. Why do I try to use real instruments? Because there's a different sound, there's a different tone, and there's a different feel to real instruments. Why? Because just like digital video, analog and digital music have two different sides. Let's talk about digital sound first. And I want to point this out specifically because I'm referring not to the vocal artists, but I'm referring to the digital instruments. I'm referring to the instruments themselves. Vocal artists, well, that's actually analog. You got a person rapping, you got a person singing, you got a person doing I don't want to say spoken word. I don't want to say or speech over music. Spoken word over music. You got somebody doing anything over music right there live in front of you. That's analog because that person's voice is unhinged by, well, in most cases, unhinged by the digital elements. It's usually going through a microphone and it's going through a live system and it's going to give you all analog natural sound. Now, they can put effects on that, which can digitize the voice a little bit more, especially when you talk about most of these rap artists today. Like most of these trap music artists are always going to have auto-tune on their voice, and they're always going to have the robotic side turned up. That's why music feels a lot more robotic from them. But it's not just that. Music feels a lot more robotic because they got digital sounds behind this digital voice print. And so that gives you this completely robotic feel, and they're actually keying in on specific tones, specific sounds, specific feelings to induce feelings into you, because music has become, as an industry, more scientific than you think. So now, when I refer to digital instruments, I refer to it in two things. I mean, when I was talking about digital instruments, I talked about analog and I talked about digital, all right? And they do have way different feels. And that's even if you're sampling real instruments. You can sample real instruments, but once it becomes a digital imprint, it's going to have a different feel. All right. When you look at the actual waveforms, like let's say you look at two waveforms, a waveform of analog sound and a waveform of digital sound. The waveform of analog sound it goes kind of everywhere. It lets it flow go wherever the peaks go, wherever the sound just flows through it. It captures it all, every single aspect. But when you look at a digital waveform, well, a real digital waveform, if you looked at them raw through a real waveform view, you will see that digital, when you start to get in real close, starts to cut off. So instead of finding peaks and valleys that go up and spikes and peaks down like this, you know, that go up and down like this, digital goes like this. And it's boxy. So it cuts off that ring, that one part that lets the sound just ring in the air. So when you have like a piano and at the end of a song, somebody's doing, you know, the song, and at the end, and then they have a little medley at the end that they play it, and then they hold a note, that note gets cut short. That ring gets cut short. Now the ring is still there, the note's still playing, but its expanse, its depth gets cut short, and its feeling gets cut short. And that same depth is being taken out of video the same way. So I just want to give you that whole side and aspect, you know what I mean? Because when you look at the actual waveforms of analog sound, it has natural inflections. But however, if you actually take a look at digital music, it is really boxed off. The sound is shaped, and it really decreases. It's shaped so it can decrease the file size, but it's shaped in order to give you less file size and give you a way to edit it quickly. So, and a way to mess with it. I mean, you know, music, if you think about that, music was done analog on tape. Tape, it starts to die after many years. Keeping it on file, you got better storage. There's all kind of things that make digital better in some ways. But try to originally record your sound analog so you can get the deepest feel. Because if you record everything analog with analog instruments and then you take it to digital, that music's going to be timeless. As long as it's a great song, it could be the easiest riffs, it could be the easiest track, it could be the easiest lyrics. As long as it's a great song and you get the feeling out there and you record it analog, you're going to get that feeling. Same thing with film. If you get a chance, if you can afford to, get a chance, film it. Film it on film. You know, I just can't say enough. Or at least get a 5K red camera, something that's going to get as much information as possible, right? So anyway, the sound of digital and the sound of the video for digital are shaped. And that's what we call compression, folks. It's shaped down, boxed down to a smaller file size. You're compressing the audio or you're compressing the video. And remember that. Well, anyway, that's it for me. I didn't know where I was going at the end. I had to remember what I was trying to say because I lost time earlier. But anyway, now that the camera's still rolling, I'll see you soon. This is Doc. I'm out of here. Stay tuned for
Doc Reo TV.
There it is. If you need to reach us on Facebook, it's at doc.reo, yeah. On Twitter at Doc Reo Rants. On Instagram, the picture way. And every time I come, I'm here to stay. Snapping photos and get it right. It's at Doc Reo tonight. Say, on YouTube, you can't stop. by Doc Reo TV. That's where you see me. That's where you see me. Hit us up on ReoBucks.com. Yeah. Back to your regularly scheduled program now. Peace, I'm out.